Hi, folks. It's John Murphy here, and welcome once again to another Tuesday webinar. And this is a real treat for us here on the Winning at Business and Life series of seminars because I'm delighted to introduce to you today a fantastic lady, Connie Kadansky from Phoenix, Arizona. Connie, say hello.
Hello there.
Great. Well, listen, that is fantastic. Just to give you a little bit of background, I said Connie is from Phoenix, Arizona. She specializes and a specialist in sales call reluctance. And she's going to give us a real treat today because it is a challenge. And I know from talking to many people that the challenge that it presents. And really, we're going to get a huge amount of tips today, some great advice, and some offers from Connie as well. So, Connie, I'm going to hand it over to you to take it away from there.
Very good. And thank you, John, for inviting me. I am so pleased and excited that you've joined the webinar today. In this ever-changing business world, sellers are now the key differentiator. It's not your product, it's not your service, it's you. And in our culture, it's not the hardest working or the best prepared or the smartest who are getting the business. It's the people who are most willing to prospect and promote. And I believe that mindset around selling and prospecting is what makes the biggest difference in people's opportunity creation. Because think about it, that's really what selling is creating those opportunities and going through the process. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to share a little bit about myself to set the context to actually why you should even listen to me. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'll let you do the ads.
Okay, so in 1997, I was taking a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I was experiencing sales call reluctance, and I didn't know what it was. I did a search on the internet and I found the book, and it's a world bestseller, The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance by George Dudley and Shannon Goodson. Well, I read that book and I was sitting in my living room and I threw it across the living room floor because I was frustrated because it really did identify exactly what was going on with me. But I was also relieved because now I knew that I was experiencing sales call reluctance. So I flew to Dallas and I went through the fear-free prospecting workshop and I coached with Shannon Goodson, one of the behavioral scientists, for 10 weeks. And at the end of those 10 weeks, Shannon said, Connie, you get this. And that is when I bought a license from behavioral science. So for the last 15 years, I've been training and coaching people, financial advisors, salespeople, insurance, software sales, you name it, pest control, uh, and just a variety of industries on overcoming that call reluctance that keeps them from earning the kind of money that they deserve. And so that is what I am so passionate about because I'm really helping people overcome fear and the fear of prospecting and promoting themselves. And in this business environment is so incredibly interesting, and it really and truly is going to require some additional skills, but most importantly, mindset. And I know that, John, you working with your people, you're consistently working with them on mindset and also process. And then the skill development comes in also. And so I want you to look at this bird and tell me, and you can share here in the question and answer or the chat, what are the characteristics that you see of this bird in order to meet his or her goal?
Clutching at straws.
Clutching at straws. And oftentimes I hear resiliency, persistence. Anybody else want to weigh in here on what you're seeing here? And the big one is really stretching and how salespeople, in order to succeed, are going to really need to stretch in order to meet their goals. And really, once people get into that rhythm, it actually gets more fun and more challenging. And so I already touched on this. The mindset is absolutely key. And coming out of the gates today, I'm sure that you didn't join into the webinar to hear something that you've already heard before or you want to hear. So I'm going to go ahead and just come out punching, because I believe that this, with every fiber of my body, that I don't care what anybody sells. I work with people that are in the banking industry that they cannot even talk to somebody unless they have $10 million that they can invest, and just at different arenas. If you're in sales, which we all are, right? If you can take on the mindset that you are a professional lead generator who happens to sell whatever you sell, financial services, that you're a professional lead generator who sells insurance or mortgages or commercial insurance. And I'll tell you where I really had this really affirm that my teaching on this is in working with a company who sells to cosmetic and plastic surgeons. And the plastic surgeons that have the mindset that they are marketers first and plastic surgeons second have a waiting line of patients here in the United States, because I know we have people from other countries. The plastic and cosmetic surgeons that have a fixed mindset, no, I'm a plastic surgeon first and foremost, they are closing their second offices and working 3 days a week, because it really is, it's about marketing and being professional lead generators. And when people take on that mindset, the most amazing thing happens is prospecting becomes more of an adventure, because they're a professional lead generator. And then process is so key. And believe it or not, I still have people who are many years in the sales arena who are still winging it. And I'm a believer that we need to have a process on how we answer our phone, because process is key, because that's where we can really start learning and tweaking so that we can get better results. So it's really about visibility management. And are you managing your visibility in your market? Recently, I was a speaker in Wisconsin for a group of 85 financial advisors, and I asked the group, I said, who here has industry-specific celebrity status? And everybody in the room said, Jim. And there's Jim. Guess what? The top producer sitting right up front in the very center. And he has managed his visibility in his market and also amongst his peers. And that's our responsibility on a daily basis, to manage that visibility. And professional salespeople who are absolutely succeeding in a powerful way have anywhere from 12 to 15 appointments a week. Yes, that is so true. And I have some of my seasoned people say, oh, I want quality versus quantity. Well, yes, indeed. You can have quality appointments, 12 to 15 a week. And you start really aiming for that, because that's where the top producers are. They've pulled it together, and that's it. So visibility management and keeping it really in front of people. So last year, the two behavioral scientists went out. They talked to 4,700 salespeople. They wanted to know, how is social media impacting their prospecting? They found that 70.8% of the 4,700 direct salespeople said that they were getting their business through direct prospecting. So social media is important. It's good for visibility management, absolutely. However, direct prospecting is vital, and picking up that phone is so important. And there are actually some companies that are telling people you don't have to pick up the phone anymore. And I believe that that is actually negligence to tell people that. It's hurting people because people are responsible for supporting their families. Their families are counting on them to support them, and we need all the creativity in order to initiate contact with our potential buyers. So that's where I step into the hornet's nest and really challenge people around their mindset, around what they're thinking about the prospecting. And it doesn't diminish the fact that you are a professional financial services rep, that it just is a fact of the times. And the people that truly get it are the people that are going to thrive through this ever-changing business world. So how do you know if you're call reluctant? Well, the first place you look is look in your wallet. How much money's in there today? And also look into your investment portfolio. What does that look like? How much money is in your investment portfolio? Because that's where call reluctance shows up first. And the second place it shows up is it shows up in your appointment calendar. So that's how you know if you're call reluctant. Very tangible proof. And so it's all about the conversations. Yesterday, I was coaching a mortgage professional, and she's new. And I was telling her the facts. You have 20 conversations a day, and you will absolutely meet your goals. 20 conversations a day. And she has a husband who is really brilliant with internet marketing. And so he's going to be able to create and get those leads in from the internet. However, she's still going to have to talk to those people, right? Have those conversations. 20 conversations a day, you'll be at the top of the heap. So let's look at a basic sales model here. There are 5 components, and the first one is to identify your prospects. And I know the Book Yourself Solid system is so good at teaching this. I love what Michael Port says: if they bore you, drain you, or frustrate you, forget them. They're not for you. And with John's system on Book Yourself Solid, that is really very powerful in identifying your prospects so that you can initiate contact, so that you can introduce yourself, your product and services, so that you can have that all coveted sales presentation and conversation, so that you can influence them to buy from you. And when you look at that sales model, most sales training starts at the 4th step. What do you say once you're in front of somebody? When in reality, the most difficult is in initiating contact and introducing yourself, because guess what? It's emotional in origin. So yes, you need a script. There's technicalities there. However, it's emotional in origin in order to succeed at step 2 and 3, initiating contact and introducing yourself.
Connie, can I just come
I
in there just for a
believe,
second? Sorry, can I just come in there a
yes,
second,
please.
just to endorse the point that you're making? I was having a conversation with a Michael Kitces. I'm not sure if you know Michael Kitces, who is a commentator in the US about a lot of in financial services. And when I was asking him, what is the biggest challenge facing, in this case, financial advisor I was talking about, but it's the same that applies to anybody who is selling. And he was saying actually the biggest challenge is really understanding the target market that you're after, understanding the specialist service that you're in, and also knowing how to actually get in front of those people, which is just the point that you're making.
Yes. And the days of smiling and dialing are over. And highly targeted phone calls, they work.
Mhm.
And you may have, I call it strategy, structure, and execution. You need to have a strategy in order to get their attention and engage them. And I believe that 70% of the sale is in engagement and uncovering the need.
Yeah.
70% of the sale is in that very front end. Thank you for adding that. And just, John, continue to. It makes it more interesting. So, what is the single best predictor of sales success? What do you think? Anybody care to weigh in here? You can put it over there in the Q&A and John will
Well, one
read it
person has
out.
actually said generating enough leads.
It's true.
Uh,
There's a high correlation
uh,
between
Somebody
prospecting
else has said
and
personal energy.
personal energy. So the two behavioral scientists over 40 years, there's a high correlation between prospecting and sales success. So the prospecting is you're managing your visibility and the sales success. Here's my definition of prospecting. So it's all about the proactivity that you take to identify, qualify, and get in front of the potential buyer. So a prospect is anybody who can get you closer to a goal. So maybe it's not that direct buyer, however, it's somebody who can introduce you, correct? So that's the prospecting. So what's your favorite excuse for not prospecting? Anybody favorite excuse for not
Fear of
consistently
rejection.
prospecting? Oh, I hear that one a lot. We're gonna take that one on. What else?
Don't have enough people to contact.
Oh, okay. Don't have enough.
Somebody else has said, well, fear again. It was the word that's actually come through. Um, Getting the time. Don't buy that, but anyway, it's come through.
Okay, so yes, so notice that those are definitely, well, we'll call them just excuses, right? And so that really is part of overcoming call reluctance, is to be really candid with yourself and with your coach and fess up and say, yeah, it's the fear of rejection. I'm going to give you a definition for fear. I want you to write it down. Fear is the mental response to a perceived threat. A mental response to a perceived threat. So what's the key word there, John?
It's mental, and
It's
well,
mental
and it's perceived.
and it's perceived, right? And so if we really look at that, oh, a mental response to a perceived threat. So when we get into the solution for the call reluctance, we're going to be talking more about that. So yes, indeed, everybody on our prospect list, they're busy, they're professional. They have lives, they have children, they have personal challenge, they have parents. Think about it, and it is our responsibility ethically to be able to tap into their world and create value for them. And yes, guess what? The prospect expects us as salespeople to create value for them just to have a conversation. The days of calling somebody up and saying, I want to learn more about your business, are over. It used to be like that, but we cannot do that anymore. We must create value for people. It's interesting that yesterday I was interviewing a top producing sales gentleman that sells the communication systems, telephone systems for companies. And somebody told him that there was a chief financial officer that was so proud of himself that throughout the country he actually saved $25,000 a year on coffee. Okay, so it was a huge company, and he did something that was saving them $25,000 a year in just their coffee in the offices. Well, this guy that sells telephone communication systems, he feels that he can save that CFO millions in a communication system. However, that CFO will not communicate with him. I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to send him a handwritten note, and I'm going to send him a 1 minute timer. You know, those little timers that have the
Yeah.
sand that goes through it?" And he said, "You give me 1 minute, and if I don't create value for you in 1 minute, then I will not contact you again." So we'll find out, but I really know, because he has the attitude, that he will get in to that CFO. However, we've got to be ethical and creative in order to tap into their world. So here's the definition for call reluctance. It is the emotional hesitation to initiate contact with prospects. So when you're ready to pick up that phone and you reach over there and you're ready to punch in those numbers, and you think, "Oh, I better check the stock market one more time," or "I wonder what's going on in the Yahoo News," right? And so you divert. So that emotional hesitation. So there are only two ways to view prospecting. Number one, as an opportunity. And think about that. That opportunity can go any which way. It can be an opportunity exactly what you want it to be. It may be where you learn some competitive intelligence. There's always an opportunity to learn how you were able to ask a question, etc., or get through that gate opener. I always call that person the gate opener, and now I'm starting to call the air traffic controller, because we absolutely can get that gate opener to be on our side. Now, every time, I'm a realist, sometimes not, but most of the time, if we really are genuinely positioning ourselves of value for that company, it's their job to be aware. And why do I know that? One time I was a gate opener for 5 years of a very prominent attorney in Phoenix. He was actually a part owner of a National Basketball Association here in Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns, and I was his gate opener, and I had people calling consistently, and it was my job to be able to listen to them and find out if they could add value to the law firm. Or we can view it as an emotional threat. So what is our mindset? Are we viewing it as an opportunity, or are we viewing it as an emotional threat to us, and we're getting all boxed in because of the fear, which is a mental response to a perceived threat? There are 4 steps to eliminate call reluctance. Number one, to become aware. Now, how are we aware of call reluctance? What were the two things?
Well, we said it was a mental, what we say, it was a mental response to a perceived threat.
Right. And so how are we aware if we have call reluctance? Where do we look first
Well,
for
well, you
evidences?
said our wallet or our diary or our investment fund.
Okay, good. The second way is to assess. Now, there is a free assessment. I'll be happy to send John the link to that. You can take a free assessment, and I'm also going to talk about an assessment that you can personally invest in to find out what exactly is going on, because there are 12 types of call reluctance. Number three is to admit. I admit. I admit that I have call reluctance. I'm afraid to initiate contact. Sometimes this can be the hardest for people. And I always kid them, and I'm not really kidding, but hopefully I'm using a little bit of humor, is, wouldn't it be better to have humility now and admit it to our coach and admit it to ourselves, or be really humble when we've lost our job, or when we are really producing at a very mediocre pace. And so use humility now or humility later. I'd rather have the humility now and admit it and take care of it. And then number 4 is to apply proven techniques to overcome that fear of prospecting. It is learned and it can become unlearned. So apply. Now there are 3 types. Well, I'm going to share. Okay, take 2. I'll start over. There are 12 types of call reluctance. 12 ways that we emotionally hesitate to initiate contact. And also, if anybody wants to have all 12 types, I'll send you that information. I'm going to only cover 4. The first type is the yielder call reluctance, and that is the individual who is very relationship oriented. They want to be liked, and they're actually wanting to be liked and approved of is more important than being productive. So they can be the people pleaser. These people are usually really good at customer service. They're very good account managers, but they are not good account developers because they're not assertive enough. And also, they haven't developed that emotional resiliency when somebody says, I'm not interested. They go, oh, okay, opposed to really getting in there and challenging that particular individual in a professional manner. So think about it. If you're talking to a prospect about their desired result and their current reality, in order to get people to move, there needs to be a little bit of tension, tension. And it's the salesperson that creates a little bit of tension and challenges people so that they will make the move. Well, people with the yielder behavior, they don't like conflict and they really avoid it. And so they don't want to, they're not as assertive in talking about pricing and closing. So when I have somebody tell me that they're having problems with closing, we usually looked at this behavior and we also look at the way that they're opening the call. And what I am finding, people that have challenges with closing are actually not opening the call properly. And they don't have a process that really gets to the very core of the meaning of the prospect's need. The over-preparer, call reluctance, is somebody who wants to be perfect. And yes, I coach many over-preparers, and the representation here is that a gemologist knows that they're dealing with a fake stone when it's perfect. However, the over-preparers think that they need that perfect script to get moving. And it's
Connie,
really,
is that not a form of procrastination? Because to a large extent, if you wait until something is perfect, it is the perfect excuse never to get started.
yes, there's procrastination is definitely involved in there, which is really self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the over-preparer is definitely they overthink, they overanalyze, and an over-preparer comes from I want to be perfect or I don't want to mess up.
Mm.
Role rejection call reluctance is very prominent in the financial services and insurance arena, and it starts at the top of the organization where there's a huge organization here in the United States, I mean major, and they are actually still training their salespeople to tell people, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I actually wrote a blog and it got published in the CEO magazine blog website, is stop fibbing to prospects. Because if you're saying, I'm not trying to sell you anything, you just blew your credibility because your prospect knows you're not telling the truth. And so people with role rejection call reluctance, they're ashamed about being in sales. It's toxic. And believe it or not, sales managers, sales trainers, motivational speakers, they carry that role rejection call reluctance, and they're actually contaminating the very people they intend to inspire. So yes, there are underdeveloped salespeople out there. We know it to be true. Who are we going to identify with? Are we going to identify with the top producers, the professional producers? Are we going to identify with the underdeveloped people? And so role rejection, call reluctance, I usually find people are, they don't understand their value. I'm here in Arizona. I'm going to take a sip of water here.
It's a dry part of the
And
world.
they don't understand. That it says my computer is overloaded. I don't know what's going on there.
Now you're coming across fine anyway.
I'm, okay, so the role rejection, oftentimes if people really can use some coaching on connecting to value, what is the value that you provide in the marketplace? Because when we really know our value, we are emotionally resilient and unstoppable if we know our value. And if a prospect tells us no, it doesn't even, it's not a blip in our day because we're convinced of our value. And then the telephone. The telephone, if you really only have telephobia, guess what? You can overcome it in one morning in your office. I did. So I really teach that your telephone is your personal ATM machine with unlimited cash in it. And when we can start perceiving it as our ATM machine, and just see it and shifting that mindset to the tool that is going to get us appointments. So those are the 4 types. So there are 8 other types that if you want to know more, I'll be happy to send you that information. So yes, the gatekeeper versus the air traffic controller. Yes, there are people out there, but the research shows you provide those people the value proposition, and also be courteous to them, treat them as if you were talking to the CEO, they'll go out of their way to help you get in the door. So now we're going to really talk about the technique for overcoming call reluctance, which is called thought realignment. What is it that you are choosing to think about prospecting? When you reach for that phone, what is it that you are thinking? Are you seeing it as an opportunity? And if you are, most likely picking up the phone, punching in the number, and making the call. Whatever you think triggers a feeling or an emotion which alters your action. And so it's really about learning how to and rewiring your brain to start thinking about prospecting and thinking about it differently, thinking about it in a way of opportunity. So when people have call reluctance, they're thinking a thought that is triggering anxiety. So in the first step in overcoming call reluctance is really identifying what is causing you to stop. Write it down. I'm going to share some of the things that I've heard over the years. So write down what is it you're thinking that is causing you to stop so that you can actually challenge it and replace it. And that's really the job that we have to do, is to identify it. Most people hide, deny, and suppress it. They sweep it under the carpet. However, they're not getting the number of appointments on a weekly basis that they need to meet their goal. So whatever you think triggers a feeling which alters your action. So what is a belief? All a belief is a thought that you think over and over again. That's all a belief is. And the most important thing I believe that I could ever say to anybody is whatever you believe, you will create situations to validate belief. So if you believe that you have value, you will create situations to validate that belief. If you believe that people don't like to be called on the phone, you will create situations to validate that belief. And there are actually people out there that are advocating that it doesn't work anymore to pick up the phone. It's not true. And when you hear somebody saying that, you need to look at what they're trying to sell you.
Connie,
Because
coincidentally, sorry, just coming in there, just in terms of thought process, coincidentally, I was just writing an introduction to a blog post today. And I was referring to, I was saying, we're in the month of May. I hear some people saying, oh, we're coming into the summer months. It's the silly season. So there'll be nobody around. And I was saying, that's just to you, what you call a belief. It's creating a mindset. Well, I won't do any business. And of course, the consequence of that is that you won't do any business. But, for anybody who is a high achiever, that just doesn't enter into the thought process.
no, it doesn't. And that's what people do around the holiday side time, and they take a medication. And it's, yes, kudos to you. I want to read that blog post. So what is attitude? All attitude is a sum total of your beliefs. So what are your beliefs about you? Because when you really look at the attitude, and I do not have caller ID on my phone. I pick up the phone if I'm available, and I have salespeople that are calling me, and I can tell you that the ones that are really friendly and know my business, I will listen to them. And I've had two recently that absolutely captivated me because they knew exactly what, they knew the name of my business, they knew what I did, they'd researched a little bit, they made the connection of what the value could be, and they were friendly. They had the attitude. And I know both of them are extremely successful. So that's where you really look at here is to question, okay, so what am I choosing to think? And I really do choose the word choose because we do choose
Mm.
on what it is that we think. So let's talk about that fear of rejection because that is brought up so much is that people have a fear of rejection is really a negative interpretation. So if somebody tells us, no, I'm not interested, it's really, okay, so what am I making that no mean? Am I going to personally take it on? Or did I simply just, they're just not a prospect or I caught them at a bad time? So when we choose to experience the fear of rejection, it throws us into a negative emotion, which throws us into negative behavior, and we don't get the results we want. So fear of rejection is only a label that changes nothing. And also is to really say, okay, am I going to choose that I just got rejected? Do you see you know where I'm going here? And so we get to decide what that no means. So it's really just a negative information. I'm going to go a little here. But at process, there are four things: beliefs, assumptions, perceptions, and the inner critic. And so what really is looking at what are us. The assumptions are more emotional. I'm coaching a financial advisor who called a high net worth individual and had a really negative conversation. I mean, it was not a pleasant situation Well, it was so emotional for him that now he thinks that it's going to be that way every time, right? The experience was so horrific. And so his assumption is that everybody's going to be like that. And it's really tripping him up. We're working hard on getting through that. The perception or the interpretation. So somebody says no. What's my perception of that? And the inner critic, which is usually really mean and destructive. And we all have that little inner critic, and some people have different degrees of intensity of the inner critic. And some people have that inner critic calm down. But these are the four things, and that's why the coaching is so important. So there are, the technical part of the coaching, the how to get in motion, but also the emotional part. And emotional intelligence is where we really develop in this area of emotional intelligence. We learn how to handle all of this constructively. So that's why I'm a big believer in the coaching. So here's some of the things that people have shared that come up for them that when they're ready to pick up that phone. Have you thought of that? I don't want to sound scripted. I'm going to mess up. What if they say they're not interested? So those are the things. They think I'm trying to sell them something. Okay, that's role rejection. I'll blow the contact. I've had people tell me that. I have just a finite number and I'll blow the contact. And then I feel inadequate. Again, that's the inner critic there. They'll be upset I interrupted them. Okay, that's the yielder call reluctance. So we are in a busy environment, and guess we are interrupting them. However, is your value greater than the interruption? So those are the ways. Now, if you can actually admit and say, okay, put your hand on your heart and say, it's not prospecting that causes me anxiety. Take a deep breath. It's not prospecting that causes me anxiety. It's my thought about prospecting. It's the thought about prospecting that is causing our anxiety. So when you can really own up to that, guess what? You are so much further ahead in overcoming the call reluctance because you're taking responsibility. So it's my thought about prospecting that is causing me anxiety. It's not prospecting in and of itself. So when you're ready to pick up that phone and you stop, immediately jot down what is causing you to stop. Look at it. Is that a limited belief, assumption, perception, interpretation, or is it my inner critic? And really find out what is the theme here. Okay, sometimes it's good just to take a deep breath and look at something cute and adorable. So we were talking about that, a lot of that into in the nitty-gritty of the fear. So once in a while, let's just take a look and give ourselves a little bit of a mental relief and look at something sweet and cute. I love that little guy. So people come to me and they say, can you help me love prospecting? Well, I never guarantee that I can help anybody love it, but I can truly help people neutralize the negative, and you can meet your goals by neutralizing the negative, by just absolutely neutralizing it, and you can move forward, and then you will start having more appointments, more success. You'll start seeing how important it is and how it really is your personal ATM machine. Now, I'm going to share something with you that most people do not know, and I feel it's my responsibility because it's scientific. And did you know that every time we think a thought, our body makes a chemical? So if you have good thoughts, elevated thoughts, happy thoughts, your body is making a chemical that makes you feel good. Conversely, if you have a negative, insecure thought, Your body makes a chemical that makes you feel exactly the way you're thinking. Now, this happens in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the chemical center of the brain. And that hypothalamus is consistently secreting chemicals and spitting out those chemicals. Now, that's not a medical word, and I've really simplified this, but if people really knew what was happening, every single thought you think, your body is secreting a chemical. And as that chemical is released in the brain, it's sending a message that feeds the physical body. And the body begins to feel the way it's thinking. So once we begin to feel the way we're thinking, the brain starts to think the way we're feeling, right? And so people with call reluctance get caught up in a loop. And it's that loop, and the body is literally thinking for us. Fear is physical. So if our thinking is creating our fear, and our thoughts create these chemicals, we have to change the way we're thinking about prospecting. And so the way to overcome call reluctance is to interrupt it, interrupt this habit of thought that creates the anxiety and fear. And so we really are literally retraining our brain. Now, am I completely advocating positive thinking? Well, I believe in positive thinking, but it's in and of itself, it's worthless. You've got to get a positive feeling that goes with it. And that's where the coaching really comes in. So what is our predominant habit of thought? Is it I can, I will, I choose? Or I can't, I have to, I'll try. And so we absolutely are responsible, and we can make those switches in our brain around choosing to think and feel more positively, and then our hypothalamus is sending out happy hormones, and we start having a completely different experience of life. So this is one that everybody here, I'm sure, has something that they're thinking about today that maybe a little bit of problematic, but what happened if you just said, it's all going to work out? It's all going to work out. Can you imagine what, with that thought, what is your hypothalamus doing now? It's all going to work out, right? So, and then another one that I like is today's the most exciting day of my life. What if you woke up every day and said to yourself, today's the most exciting day of my life? It's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And you start creating that kind of thinking and feeling. Wow, when you pick up that phone, your tone, which is 73% of the communication, is going to be entirely different. So with that said, here's my definition of confidence, because we all want more, right? Is transforming that fear into focus related thinking, communication, which is internal communication and action. Recently, I did a class for some young financial advisors under 40, and this one gentleman came up to me and he said, I have never, ever, ever thought about my internal dialogue before. Now, he had a bachelor's degree. He was in financial services. He said, I have never, ever, ever thought. And so that is really where we look at that internal and external communication, because the quality of our life equals the quality of our communication. Our internal and external communication. So with that said, the assessment that measures call reluctance, the 12 types of call reluctance, for John's group here, it's 197 to take the assessment. Plus, the book is available through Amazon. I highly recommend that you get the book. You don't need to read the whole book, just certain portions of it. So what you get from the assessment, it takes you about 40-45 minutes to take. Plus, you and I spend an hour going through it line by line on the telephone or Skype. I've been working with some people in Europe and England and Scotland, etc., and to really take a look at this. So the value is really finding out what's your current reality and then moving you into next steps. So I highly recommend that everybody invest in that. I promise you, you are going to get some information that's going to be incredibly valuable to you. So here's my contact information, and then also you know that you can get with me through John. So John, any comments, questions from you or from anybody that is attending today?
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, just to repeat that, if anybody wants to get in touch with Connie, they say certainly I'm quite happy to facilitate that, and you have the details there as well. One of the things I found it really fascinating, but one of the things that struck me early on about when you were talking, Connie, was that you were talking about people having 12 to 15 appointments per week. And and I certainly buy that and the value of doing of having that amount. But I think for many people, they actually don't really know, they wouldn't accept that they actually need to have that number of appointments. Is that something you come across?
Well, yes. However, when you really look at the top producers, that's what they're striving for.
Yeah,
And because as you know, appointments change and people cancel, people reschedule, etc. But you've got to shoot for the moon to hit the stars. And also an appointment you is when you really capitalize on that appointment and start asking for referrals and talking about referrals. I'm sure that you work with your people like with
sure.
that. But it is an absolute fact, 12 to 15 a week.
Right.
And people, when they start having those kind of appointments, believe it or not, I mean, I know you believe it, they really do get themselves in alignment. They get more organized, they get more prepared, and it is their life is just so much more just is stimulated because new business is the lifeblood of business.
Sure. Can I ask you just one other question that's related to that? And I know I'm just conscious of time, but and it has come in as a question is, when I get on the phone, it's for a lot of people, and I've heard this being said before, and just remind of it here in the question box. But how do I actually start the conversation? I mean, how do I get that initial engagement? Any tips for people on that?
Well, yes, and here's where most people, I believe 90% of the people are missing the mark, is their value proposition is I-centric. I help people like you, blah, 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 right? Where I work with my clients on people similar to you count on me or rely on me to dot, dot, dot. So what is it that they get? Now, I don't know. I think something's telling me, John, what's your belief in having a value proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you just need to. I mean, it's fundamental because it actually says what you're there to serve.
Well, and it really is. And there are some people that don't believe in it, but I'm going like, well, if you don't believe in it, I mean, because when you call somebody up, they have 7 questions around their head about you. The prospect does. And
Mm,
it's the salesperson's responsibility to answer those 7 questions. They want to know, who are you? Who's your company? What's your objective, your motive, your agenda? Do I do we have anything in common and do I like you? And so people that are issues oriented immediately want to know who you are and who's your company. And then people who are more relationship oriented want to know, what do we have in common? And so you think about the people that are building their businesses through alumni associations, etc. They are calling up, and when you can get in the door and saying, I was referred to you through XYZ, okay? It's an immediate commonality. So there's a lot of different work around having that very targeted value proposition, because people within 11 seconds decide whether they even want to talk to you. So that's through your tone. Do you sound friendly? And then within 45 seconds decide whether they're even going to listen to you.
Yeah.
But to be able to just hit the ground running with what I recommend is that, I work with people similar to you who count on me to XYZ. So
Great.
let them know that you're working with other people similar to them in some way, I mean, and I really believe that that's the one of the best.
That's
You
fantastic.
just, yeah.
That's great. That's a really, because I think that's really helpful for people, because I'm a firm believer that once you actually get started, that you actually, it's a bit like, taking off. Once you've kind of left the runway, you're airborne and off you go. For some people, it's actually just getting off the ground. And once they get off the ground, I think that they can manage quite well. Connie, we're right up against the time. I really, really appreciate the fact that you have, come along here today. I know it's very early in Phoenix, Arizona, so I really appreciate it. I've no doubt that everybody that has registered and that's come along, we've got fantastic value from this. Happy to kind of share your information again with anybody else who comes along to me. So, listen, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it, and we will talk very, very soon. I hope you enjoy the exercise.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you everybody. I wish you a beautiful day.
Thank you.